Considering the innovations in digital technology over the past few decades, we may now be breathing the dying breaths of privacy in America. It does us well, in this age of the camera's eternal presence, to consider George Orwell's novel, 1984. The story's protagonist states, "It was terribly dangerous to let your thoughts wander when you were in any public place or within range of a telescreen." This fictional tale is, of course, an extreme case of an authoritarian government. However, the allegory is a useful one to consider when discussing the topic of mass surveillance. Mass surveillance is the indiscriminate monitoring of an entire population or a significant portion of that population. This can create distrust in government and paranoia that has harmful effects on the interpersonal communications of private citizens. Today, words spoken through an online platform, or even by word of mouth, may be recorded and pulled from a database at any time. Since the whistleblower, Edward Snowden, leaked classified documents detailing NSA surveillance methods, many Americans have felt that their constitutional rights to free speech and privacy have been endangered. Since the Snowden revelations, many Freedom of Information Act requests have been made to allow citizens to access the leaked documents in a redacted form, such that it does not compromise national security operations. In the Federal Intelligence Surveillance Court, FISC, Order BR 06-08, the court was considerate of the First Amendment when allowing the National Security Administration to conduct mass surveillance. The language of these bills refers to all call detail records as telephony metadata, and states that this data shall not be produced solely on the basis of activities protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. However, the fact that such data is collected in the first place may have indirect effects on U.S. citizens' right to free speech. The Pew Research Center, PRC, is a non-profit, nonpartisan, and non-advocacy research organization that uses public opinion polling, demographic research, and computational social science research to inform the public about issues that are changing our world. Their 2014 study, Americans' Attitudes About Privacy, Security, and Surveillance, invited a representative sample of 1,537 English-speaking adults aged 18 years or older to answer questions regarding surveillance and trust in government. The original sample of 1,537 were participants in a survey conducted by GfK Group using Knowledge Panel, a nationally representative online research panel. Perhaps exhausted by taking a series of surveys, only 498 participants agreed to join the additional PRC survey. The PRC survey found that of this sample, only 6% of participants are very confident that telephone companies can protect their metadata. If this survey can be taken as indicative of the general opinion among Americans, then free speech is facing a serious threat. When telephone conversations are so critical to interpersonal communications in the 21st century, the thought that these conversations could be monitored or recorded may limit the freedom of speech. Although the FISC outlines that activities protected by the First Amendment should not be a reason to produce records of telephony metadata, many citizens are unconcerned with these fine details. Rather, a general distrust in the security of telephone conversations has formed. It may be speculated that the very ability to collect such data is dangerous, regardless of the rules governing its use. Further speculation may lead us to consider, if such data is available upon request by the NSA, is it constantly being stored in the case that a request is made? Additionally, while our government may observe the U.S. Constitution, other countries may not. More contemporary court rulings regarding the use of popular phone apps, such as TikTok, find that surveillance conducted by foreign nations is of great concern. The PRC survey found that 69% of participants were not confident that the data stored by social media sites would remain private. Cell phones are ever present in public spaces. We are now all within range of a telescreen for most of our lives. Understanding the relationship between government surveillance and foreign affairs is critical to discussing its problems and their potential solutions. National security is the U.S. government's motive and primary concern when discussing mass surveillance. It should be no surprise, then, that mass surveillance in America was rapidly increased and hastily put into action because of the attacks that occurred on September 11, 2001. 45 days after the attacks, the Patriot Act was created in response to the growing threat to national security. But its swift implementation allowed for new surveillance programs that endangered Americans' Fourth Amendment rights. The FISC Order BR 06-08 that was previously discussed was a result of growing concerns about foreign adversary activity within the U.S., and its benefits did not entirely equal its cost. The Patriot Act allowed federal law enforcement agencies to search private property and monitor electrical communications without notifying American citizens until a later date. These searches are nearly a violation of the Fourth Amendment. However, the gag orders associated with them are certainly an infringement of the First Amendment. When the Patriot Act is used to collect data from private companies, national security letters, NSL, may be issued to prevent these companies from informing the public. These NSLs do not require prior court approval either, although the Fourth Amendment states that searches and seizures of private citizens' effects must include warrants that are particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. This conversation does not need to be seen as conspiratorial. Interpersonal communication comes with the inherent concept of privacy. People should feel free to communicate with their friends and family through their phones and should be able to trust that these conversations will remain private. If we simply accept that a private company or government entity could at any time record or monitor our private conversations, we are sacrificing one of the most valuable rights given to us by the U.S. Constitution. Restoring this freedom is possible through increased government oversight and mindful lawmaking. Surveillance in the name of national security is a necessary function of the government. There must be investigations conducted to ensure that tragedies like the events of September the 11th do not occur again. However, mass surveillance is indiscriminate and violates the rights of U.S. citizens. When the government monitors the phone calls of Americans, they are suggesting that all Americans are suspects. To prevent the complex myriad of issues that arise from mass surveillance, government monitoring should be made specific and carried out with intention. Any such program should be presented to Congress so that our elected officials can rule in favor of American interests while still preserving the necessary secrets to ensure national security. Perhaps Edward Snowden believed that what he was doing was right. However, such a mass information leak is detrimental to the safety of our country. To prevent such a situation from occurring, government agencies must be willing to be open about their programs in a controlled setting. Whistleblowers should have a safe way to come forward with their concerns and see them addressed appropriately. Congress may be able to amend these surveillance programs to ensure that they are conducted in a targeted manner that protects innocent citizens while still identifying threats to the country. Similarly, laws should be passed that prohibit private companies from using apps to record phone calls or access cameras unless specifically allowed to by users. We don't need to allow the death of privacy to enjoy the benefits of modern technology. By voting for officials and bills that support our right to privacy and free speech, we can make sure that our interpersonal communications remain one-on-one.